Welcome to Star Wars Timeline. Today I'm taking a look at Leia's Adventure, Moving Target. Let's find out if this book pays homage to our favorite princess, or if we should keep it moving. Let's find out. Where should I start reading? What is canon versus legends? When does the story begin? The answers to these questions is right here on Star Wars Timeline. Moving Target, A Princess Leia Adventure was released on September 4th, 2015, right before the release of The Force Awakens. As a matter of fact, it is part of the journey into the Star Wars Force Awakens series. They kind of advertised the series of books in that way, trying to connect them to the new Star Wars trilogy. It's written by Cecil Castellucci and Jason Fry, with cover illustrations and inside illustrations done by Phil Noto. Now, very quick thing before we start talking about this book. I always enjoy highlighting the artwork in Star Wars books because I feel that the Star Wars artists are not being highlighted enough. And just looking at this cover of the Moving Target, and I'll show you something else over here, guys. It's really beautiful looking at this design. It's just, the book is so pleasant to hold in your hand, and especially if you like reading physical books to own in your collection. And if I can find an illustration or two which kind of punctuate the story here, it's pretty interesting stuff. And I highly recommend it for any Star Wars book collectors to get it just on that premise of it's a beautifully designed book. Now, here's the thing. Even though it's not part of any sort of trilogy, but I have already reviewed 2 other books in this, so to speak, set, because I enjoy talking about these books as a complete set. Why? Because they all take place immediately after Return of the Jedi, or sometime in between that, during basically the original Star Wars trilogy. And it focuses on the 3 main heroes. We have the Han Solo Adventure, Smuggler's Run, if you guys could see over here. And then we have Weapon of the Jedi, the Luke Skywalker Adventure. I'll drop the links to those reviews so you guys could check them out. But I would highly recommend all 3 of them as a set. You know, regardless, we're going to talk about this book, the Leia's title, individually, but as a set, they kind of complete each other because they're talking about our favorite heroes in their prime. Something that many of us wanted to see in the sequel trilogy, but obviously 30 years have passed and it wasn't the proper timeline to do them, you know, as young people. Anyway, I just wanted to also highlight these books and say that, you know, you as readers should, guys, be aware of this. Now, the story here in the Moving Target, it takes place 4 years after Battle of Yavin, or after Episode 4, which is considered like year 0 for Star Wars, and then we move back and forward in the timeline. The particular events in this book take place before Episode 6, right before Luke, Leia, and Lando Calrissian try to go and rescue Han on Tatooine. Guys, before I start talking about the plot in this book, quick spoiler alert. If you don't want to find out the story particulars and you know, stuff like this, please skip forward. I will timestamp this video so you can go straight to my impression. You have been warned. I'm going to talk about the story here. And let me give you a quick synopsis before I move on with my impression and give you guys my thoughts on this book. So I got my notes here just to quickly run through the plot so you have the gist and idea of what happens in the story. I'm not going to go into every single detail. And quite frankly, guys, I'm pretty much navigating by memory. And I read this book 5 years ago, almost 6 years ago, when it just came out in 2015. So a couple of details might be, you know, hazy, but I still remember my overall impression from this book, just like the other ones. So let's get into it. What is the story about? It begins with an older Leia, the one that we see in The Force Awakens, right on the heels of the Star Wars sequels. And she's retelling her older adventure when she was a younger person. So it kind of starts there. And I guess that was the connection into The Force Awakens, but not really. It's a very self-contained story. And then Leia starts retelling the actual story plot of this book, which happens when she was a much younger self. So Leia is aboard her flagship Nebulon B frigate called Remembrance, and they are in hiding because Leia and obviously the rebels are prime targets, especially Leia because she's the face of, and she's one of the leaders of the rebellion. She's a high priority target, and Mon Mothma, the one that we see right in the Return of the Jedi, she calls to rebel leadership and she tells them that they're meeting for this a secret meeting on a planet called Zastiga, or Zastiga, whatever you pronounce it. And what Mon Mothma relates to the rest of the leadership of the Alliance is that they discover the plans to the second Death Star, that they're building another terror machine, next to the Endor moon, and that they're trying to formulate a plan how to take it down, and how to destroy it. We also remember that Bothans were involved in getting the plans to that particular Death Star, as Mon Mothma tells us in Episode 6 during that war room scene. So Leia and a small task force plant different message beacons scattered across different planets, trying to call to the Rebel Alliance and sympathizers incognito, and trying to do it in secret away from the prying eyes of the Empire. And it's calling everybody to action. They're telling, this is the opportune moment, the decisive battle is coming, and we need all hands on the deck. We need everybody who is willing to fight for the rebellion and for the just cause. Please come and join us. And Leia basically spends her adventure, it's almost like a mini Odyssey. She goes to different planets and she tries to recruit people, or she tries to spread the message. And, I'm not going to go into very specifics of it, but there's quite heartfelt moments there. There's a lot of action, and she loses friends along the way. She starts off with this gang of friends, including actually the Stellistan Nien Nunb, that you guys might probably remember. He rides in the Millennium Falcon alongside with Lando Calrissian when they're destroying the Death Star. He's actually one of the party members, and there are other members of that small infiltration group that don't make it to the rest of the adventure, and you kind of feel like heartfelt, and there is quite some loss in this book. And as Leia goes to these different planets on her mission, she also obviously tries to shake the Imperial pursuit, and she's constantly into hiding, and is losing comrades along the way. But eventually she gets trapped, and in order to save the rebellion, in order to save Leia as this beacon of light and hope, her friends actually sacrifice themselves so she's able to escape this Imperial ship. At the end of the book, Leia makes contact with Luke Skywalker, and she tells him, I and my friends have actually scooped out the info. We know where Han is being held now. He's actually back on Tatooine in Jabba's palace, and we have to go and rescue him. And that's where the book ends. It was a pretty brisk and short read, and as I mentioned, it's a very self-contained story that doesn't relate to the sequels, really. It relates a lot more to the original Star Wars. And now let's get into my impressions, and I'll tell you guys what I personally thought about this book. First and foremost, this is a young reader's novel, and it honestly feels like a chapter of a larger story. And that's actually the reason I showed you all of these 3 books, because when you read them all together, first of all, it's a meatier content, there's a lot more to it, and it feels a lot more wholesome and complete as a proper adult book would. Because the prose here is pretty much, it's gritty. It has like very, very tough and tense moments there, even for adults to relate to. It doesn't feel like it's just kid-friendly or kid-oriented. But I enjoyed the fact that Leia's particular book felt self-contained and pretty quick and easy read. It kind of like makes the story and action very immediate, and I enjoyed that. And the book itself doesn't connect with the other 2 narratively, but in spirit, they are kind of like very similar. They have very similar tone, that each one of them, Leia, Luke, and Han, are on their separate adventures, and they're reevaluating themselves. What are they bringing to the cause? What are they doing for the rebellion? And they're also still discovering themselves. You have to remember that even though Han is the oldest of them all, they're still very young people, and they're trying to discover themselves, and Leia is trying to figure out who she is. And that's the best part that I liked about this book. Not only do we see the inner workings of the rebellion, and we see how they operate, how they stage their operations, and how they make plans moving forward, and how Mon Mothma is the leader of this rebellion, but she's now also trying to bring Leia more into the fold and pass on her knowledge and wisdom onto Leia. And she wants to see Leia succeed and, take the flagship and lead this rebellion forward. And the best moments are obviously when we're dealing with Leia's emotions. There's a great sense of loss and compassion for her comrades who fall in battle because of her. There's a sense of survivor's guilt where she knows what the rebellion needs. She knows that no matter how tough emotionally it could get, that she needs to be there, she needs to be regal, she needs to project confidence, because people trust in her and people depend on her. People love her and they're willing to sacrifice their lives for her. And I thought it was so effectively done in this book. And we see Leia's compassion, and we'll also see Leia as a young woman. There's another Leia young adult novel, which I also have reviewed, where we see a much younger teenage version of Leia. Here, she's a young woman. She's in her early 20s, but she's still discovering herself, and she's learning the ropes of how to be this leader and how to become what Mon Mothma is, because she's still a role model for Leia, and Leia has a lot to learn on the road to becoming this leader that we see in sequels, how she's the rebellion, or the resistance in that case. And so, yes, like I said, this book highlights Leia, and what makes or breaks such a story that focuses solely on one individual character, especially on a prominent character like Han, Luke, and Leia, I felt that the book is gonna crash and burn or soar high, depending on how the author is managing to handle this character. And guys, I gotta tell you, the author of this book, Cecil, Castellucci, and Jason Fry, they nail Leia. These three are some of my favorite Star Wars books because they illustrate Luke, Han, and Leia and highlight them in such a way that you immediately recognize them the way they were in the original saga. Let's say if you're a fan who wasn't very pleased with Star Wars sequels, and it's like, man, you know, I wish we went back to the days when we see young heroes like we saw Luke Skywalker and Mandalorian, and you want more of that content, these are definitely the books for you, because moving target, I mean, from the first pages, you start reading her, the mannerism of Carrie Fisher, the beliefs of Leia, who she is, and the thought process and kind of emotions that she has, clearly tell us that that's Leia, 100%. And that was actually my favorite part about this book. So that's pretty much all, guys. I just wanted to say that it was a quick and short read, a very enjoyable read. And it's a book that I would recommend not only to young readers or ladies or Leia fans like myself. Obviously, a lot of us are, most of us are. But to any Star Wars fan who wants more of the original trilogy content. These are stellar books, and I recommend you actually read all three of them to get the full experience and to get the best out of it. If I were to rate this book, just like the other ones, I would give it a 4 out of 4. It's awesome. I mean, when you read this book, even after hundreds of Star Wars Legends books that I've read, you know, some of them managed to do Leia personality quite well. Others not as successfully. You know, different authors have different skill sets, and some focused more on the action, even though they would have Leia character in there. But this book was sold on the premise that it's a Leia adventure, and it delivers 110%, and it deserves my 4 out of 4 score. Anyway, guys, I really hope you enjoyed this video. I would love to hear some of your comments. Let me know if you've read this book, if you really enjoyed, or if after watching my video, you will go and buy this book. And if after reading it, did this book give you the feeling that you were missing that you unfortunately you didn't get from watching the Star Wars sequels? Thank you so much for watching and checking out my channel. I would really appreciate if you support me, hit that bell button so you stay tuned for my future releases. I just launched my Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic playthrough series. You might find that exciting as well. And I'll see you guys next time. Take care.